everyone, and welcome to this edition of b.Cast, Bostrom's Association podcast dedicated to talking about trends, insights, and really anything interesting going on in the world of association management. Today's guest is John Dee, CEO of Bostrom, who recently took the helm of this 90-year-old organization back on January 1. We're going to dive into his insights about what's happening in the world of association management post-COVID, digital transformation, financial management strategies, innovation in terms of education and content delivery, and more. So, John, welcome to the podcast. Now, you've been with Bostrom for 30 years, but January 1, you took the helm as CEO. So, what's your first 6 months been like?
Well, it's as you mentioned, taking over a 90-year company could be rather daunting. I do have the 30 years of experience, which is very beneficial, obviously. But really, the way that we approach the succession plan has been in place for about 5 years. We've been working on the plan itself back in 2018, and with that, and then with the pandemic coming in 2020, it slowed us down a little bit and actually worked to our benefit. It allowed us to be much more methodical as we were putting together new leadership teams within the company and sorting a lot of things out. So by the time January 1st came, I would say I was pretty comfortable stepping into that role. And so far, so good for the first 6 months.
Are there any, that's amazing, like stepping into that role the first 6 months, but you're also coming out of COVID, out of 2 years in the association industry that were, very disruptive. So are there any trends that you're seeing with financial management, technology, customer strategies, anything that you see popping up, that you find challenging or as an opportunity?
Yes, for sure. There's those things you mentioned, they're all very relevant in today's association management, obviously. First of all, you mentioned financial implications from the pandemic itself. Investment funds were hit pretty well during the pandemic because of the drop in revenues throughout that period with cancellation of meetings and different things like that. And then that became coupled with the stock market issues of 2022, which as groups were just starting to get revenue streams back and the like, soon had to deal with a loss on investments, albeit unrealized. It was still, the hit to their financial statements. So that gave a lot of organizations and boards pause during that process. During the pandemic itself, I had many consultative meetings with boards, explaining to them that's the purpose of the rainy day fund is for these types of circumstances, and basically trying to convince boards that it was raining outside and it was time to dip into those funds. And that was more challenging than I thought, to be honest. They still, because of years of practice of holding very tight to those purse strings, many organizations weren't comfortable taking that on and beginning the process of depleting some of those to keep programs going. Many did, however. And then, like I said, just this past year with the investment losses that many organizations suffered through, that's been challenging. Thankfully, the first 6 months of 2023 seems to be working its way out of that. So hopefully that's moving in the right direction. The other trend that's very strong is a trend towards outsourcing, to be honest, which has been beneficial for an organization like ours, an association management company. During the pandemic, many organizations need to cut back on staff and make some very hard decisions. And now, as they start to move out of that area, they're starting to ramp back up and being very strategic at the way they do it. So they're not necessarily just replacing people that had been on staff before, but taking a step back and looking if there's a different way to do that. And many times it is outsourcing certain functions as opposed to rebuilding the staff team that you had in the past. So we're seeing that a lot on the meeting side, marketing as well. Those kind of areas are basically been growth for us over the past 12 to 18 months. Meetings themselves, as I mentioned, many are back in person now. Obviously, we worked with many organizations to pivot to virtual meetings during the pandemic, and then coming out of the pandemic, the hybrid way of meeting, and some of those changes will be long lasting. There's a lot of professional societies that saw a great benefit of moving to a virtual environment for their education. And many of them reach customers that they had never reached before with an in-person conference. So we're seeing that staying in place there. The trade organizations, many of them want to be back in person. Many of our trade organization clients have come to us and say, if you set up another Zoom, we will never attend it. So they really want to be back in person. We're seeing the growth of those coming back as well. So those are all good news on that front. But again, some of those things that took place during the pandemic will be here, and they'll be something that we'll be dealing with for a long time. The last thing you mentioned was technology. Bostrom, part of our succession planning, we had a 5-year strategic plan, and a big part of that strategic plan was also digital transformation and what technology was going to do. And actually, Jeanne, you headed up that effort for us. But that continues to evolve. AI and ChatGPT and all those different kind of things are just seem to be coming at us a lot faster than they used to. So very glad that we put that group together back when we did, back in 2019, to start looking at things. And we really started with a blank slate. We started with, do associations really need an AMS? Those kind of conversations. We really wanted to start from the ground zero. So I don't know, Jeanne, if you wanted to add a little bit about that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about the boards and the changes they made coming out of COVID, what I loved about the opportunity that came about with boards is that they made quick decisions. Like, they were forced to make very, very quick decisions about their meetings, about cancellation, about hybrid, about virtual education. What did that mean? How do we monetize content? All of those things seem to move so fast coming out of COVID. And technology played a huge part of that, So I think it was great to lead that digital transformation task force and, really think about, how is technology going to add efficiency and innovative programming to associations in the future. And I think that the willingness of boards to move faster, to look at new technologies in a different way, that really made our jobs interesting in the last few years, and hopefully in the future too. So John, what does your job look like in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, one thing I've spent the first 6 months on is really developing a network of fellow CEOs that I've known for a period of time that I admire in the industry, and then really, setting up that network so I have that peer group to kind of tap into from time to time to speak to about certain issues that may be unique to the CEO role that I'm not as familiar with. So I made it a point the first 6 months on the job to schedule one of those meetings each month with a different person. And through that, I've started to develop that network. So making sure to keep those connections, I think, will be very important. There's other avenues to do that as well through some of our industry associations. So I plan to take a more active role in the leadership component of those groups in order to do that as well. So that's from a personal standpoint, kind of the plan there. From a job specific area, the main thing is really taking care of our employees and the care and feeding of them. Obviously, the job market been very stressful for all businesses, and the association industry is no different than those. We've been growing, so we've been looking to add on to our staff, and at the same time, we've dealt with some of the transitions that many other firms have dealt with people moving on to other opportunities as well. As most people know, COVID did kind of give people another lease on life in a lot of areas where they're looking to do things maybe a little bit differently than they had done in the past, and look into different job opportunities and things in different areas and different careers that they may not have thought of back in 2019. So we've dealt with our share of that. And like I said, with the growth, trying to keep that going is important. Cost of employment, obviously, is a major issue for a small business like ours. The market continues to drive salaries, and we want to make sure that fits in properly to the service model that we have and the clients that we serve. The other side of that is making sure, as our employees are our greatest asset, we want to take care of them, and that goes through a lot of different areas. We started a culture roadmap again back in 2019, where we are really focused on career paths for our employees, for professional development. There is a major DEI segment of that that's also involved. So really working with all of our people managers on trainings and strategies of working through different issues and all those kind of things. So we've really invested a lot of that in the past few months, or past few years actually, and we're starting to see some of the fruits of that as we move forward here. But that's an ongoing thing. That's not a one and done type of situation. It's something you need to keep in the forefront all throughout. And now I think it is important within my role to not only support the leadership team that's in place in order to do that, but also have that impact with all of our employees, and to make sure that they understand the culture of the organization and what we're trying to achieve here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you have a lot on your plate for the next 6 to 12 months, but it's an environment you're well versed in, so I am sure it will be successful. At the end of every podcast, we do a mix of what some people out there might find familiar in terms of a Proust questionnaire, or a mix of what James Lipton used to do at the Actors Studio, which is a rapid fire question and answer period. So I am going to throw some questions at you, and the first thing that comes to your mind, one word, a phrase, however you want to answer it. It's just a very quick Q&A to just give the audience a little bit more insight into who you are, John. Are you ready?
Interesting. Sure.
All right. What is your current state of mind?
Stressed.
What do you most value in your colleagues at Bostrom?
Humor.
What characteristic makes you well suited for working with associations?
Being a father and coach.
Very good. What do you consider your greatest achievement?
That's a good one. I'll say becoming CEO of Bostrom.
Who is your favorite client at Bostrom?
You're trying to get me in trouble. They're all my favorite clients.
Who's your favorite employee?
Jeanne Sheehy.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Which talent would you most like to have?
I am not artistic at all, and be it drawing or painting or music or anything, I would love to have any artistic talent.
Aw, that's great. What is your favorite word?
Favorite word?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. Favorite word. What's my go-to word?
Yeah.
No idea. I'll do 2 words. Game on.
I love it. All right, last question, and then we'll put you out of your misery for this podcast. What profession, other than working with associations, would you like to attempt?
Oh, well, I've been very active as a volunteer athletic coach in multiple different sports, and have always said if this didn't work out for me, after 30 years, I'd be a high school teacher and coach.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you, John. Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. You were a very good sport. And thanks to everyone for listening in, and we'll see you at the next b.Cast.